The Shroud of Turin. This broadcast is about the Shroud of Turin and why many skeptics have researched it and tried to either credit it or discredit it. Many of them have discredited it. The following series of videos, Pat doesn't speak in this video, but he speaks in the next two videos. Pat Patterson has done extensive research into not only the historical evidence of the Shroud of Turin, but also the medical and carbon dating evidence for the Shroud of Turin. To begin, one of the things that Pat mentioned as he was being interviewed by a local radio station is this. He mentions the fact the shroud is approximately 14 feet long, and it depicts a Jewish man who is about 5 feet 10 inches tall and between 150 and 180 pounds. The shroud's likeness is composed of sweat, plasma-like fluid, and blood. That's what actually creates the print on the shroud. The shroud is definitely the image from the historical and other evidence that's on the shroud. It is definitely, without question, the image of a Jewish man who was crucified and beaten beforehand, before he was crucified. This is very important. All the wounds that are represented in the shroud are the very wounds, all of the ones that are documented in the Gospels that talk about the crucifixion. Now, after Jesus was crucified and laid to rest, crucifixion was not something that happened that day and never again, and not before that. Crucifixion was a regular method of punishing criminals for their criminal acts. The Roman Empire would say in your face, if you mess with us, this is what will happen to you. So there were a lot of other Jewish people men who were crucified after Jesus was crucified. But none of them were poked in the side with a spear. From all the other research that has been done, extensive research that has been done on the bodies of all the other Jewish men who were crucified before and after Christ, none of them was punctured through the side with a spear. Only Jesus was. This particular shroud shows a man who was punctured on the side that Jesus is said to be punctured on in the Gospels, and there is plasma and blood evidence on that particular spot of the shroud. Pat Patterson goes on to say that every single member of this team of experts that was set out in the 1970s to try to prove or disprove the Shroud of Turin, one of them was a criminologist that they were all specialists in a certain field. That's why they were assigned. Just as a historical fact, no member of this team was a woman. They just all happened to be guys, all males that participated in this research project on the shroud. Well, after thorough research, they determined that there were coin marks over the eyes of the man in the image. Well, these coin marks left a print, and it would have been very normal for the coin marks to be placed over the body after it was brought down from the cross, and with all the blood and everything else that Joseph of Arimathea, I believe it was, I may have the wrong person, who came and wrapped the body up in his cloth This is a very fine, expensive cloth that happened to be soaked through from one side to the other with blood. It's a cloth that is three-dimensional. He would not have seen the coins that were placed over the eyes because it would have been soaked with blood. In any event, when he wrapped the body up, he would not have removed them. Well, after this, since obviously the shroud would have come off from him when he had risen from the dead, and they have opened it up and examined it, and these coin marks that appeared on the eyes of the image in the shroud, they have been studied in detail by experts of coins from all different periods the shroud is said to possibly be from. The period is very specifically been determined. The coins that were used on the person in the image in the Shroud of Turin are the coins that were issued by Pontius Pilate. Now just soak that in for a minute. This person was specifically crucified while Pontius Pilate was the Roman procurator. Because every time a new procurator comes in, the coin changes. Now get your breath for a second. It's all very important information. And Pat Patterson has a website. He did not give it out during the program, but if you just Google Pat Patterson, you can find out more information that it's available in this particular broadcast. But I would encourage you, because the next two videos are actually him being interviewed, rather than Googling that, go ahead and listen to the next two videos, and you will hear his actual voice talking about this fascinating topic. One last thing I want to mention is that, again, as he said before, that this particular Jewish man was not only crucified, but was severely beaten and flogged beforehand. Okay? That's not the whole story. The last part of the story was that this particular beating and flogging is the most severe that we have on record from that time period of crucifixion. In fact, the medical evidence shows, according to Mr. Patterson, that this particular whipping and flogging should have killed this man. He should have never made it to the cross. He should have been dead on the spot and never been alive to be able to carry the timber that Christ carried across his back. And the evidence suggests this was no ordinary man. Any other ordinary man would have bled out. But this was no ordinary man. Pat Patterson suggests, and I think there's strong evidence to agree, that this man that represented on the Shroud of Turin is not just any man, but the God-man.